Welcome to Behind the Tools. Here's Tradify CEO and your host, Michael Steckler.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Behind the Tools with Tradify. And this week we've got someone who isn't on the tools, but very much involved in running a trades business. So we've got Tara Mcilvenie to join us from Australia from Connect Air and Refrigeration. Tara, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
No, our pleasure. So Tara, you're pretty much running the business. Before we dive in, just in terms of where you're at. So Tara is based in the Blue Mountains in New South Wales, which is quite close to Sydney. And I believe called the Blue Mountains because of the blue haze that settles over the mountains from the eucalyptus trees, if that's
correct.
And there's a lot of there's a lot of dingoes and koalas. Do you get to see many of those?
People think that we do. We don't, especially after the bushfires. Yeah. There was quite a few before the bushfires, but hopefully they're starting to repair and come back. So
yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Yeah. So at the moment, I have lots of listeners all over the world, and for those that don't know, so it's a lovely part of Australia, like I say, close to Sydney. Unfortunately, was really, really impacted in sort of 2019, 2020 with the bushfires, which are, for background for everyone else, I mean, bushfires are more commonplace in certain regions in Australia, but the Blue Mountains isn't usually as devastated, doesn't usually come down as much as that. And that was actually really, really severe. I mean, it's pretty well publicized all over the world, but how big an impact was that for you guys personally and professionally?
Not so much professionally. Personally, it was quite, you're always on edge. You don't know if you have to leave, but look, we made it through, and but that's the joys of living here. So if you live here, that's what to expect it. So I've lived here all my life. So, it just comes with the territory.
And sort of being based where you are most of your customers sort of in Sydney, or is it kind of all over the region?
All over the region. So we will travel to, of course, the Blue Mountains, but also Southwest Sydney, Central Coast. I'm not sure if you're familiar about the Central Coast area, but that's, the northern side, and also down into the city. So, we travel quite a bit. So
fantastic. And do you want to give maybe a quick overview of your business and what you guys do?
Yeah, sure. So we are a air conditioning and commercial refrigeration company. We currently have 5 employees, so we're small, but we are growing quite quickly. We mostly focus on a lot of our work is residential, but we're currently moving into the commercial. So doing more commercial type installations for air conditioning, and then still keeping our commercial customers for refrigeration, that's the word.
Great. I'd like to get into that in a minute, actually, in terms of commercial side, because that's quite an interesting area about how people build their business there. One of the other things, I guess, which timestamps this is that's a good guard dog you got there.
I am so sorry.
No. I've got one of those. I've got one of those at home, and he does it. I'm presuming you said there's some construction going on out the back, and that's probably why.
Correct. A truck
he or she is doing that.
He's like, what are you doing here? Yes.
Yeah, he's good. No, he's well trained. That's good. So one of the sort of New South Wales at the moment, unfortunately, with COVID and everything else, has been pretty heavily impacted. Again, in terms of time stamping this podcast, how's that affected the business and how you operate right now?
Well, it's definitely affected us greatly. So last year during lockdown, we were still able to work. So yes, it did affect us. We did drop off work, but we were still able to work. This lockdown, we weren't able to work for 2 weeks. And there's still a lot of restrictions in place that we are currently only on 2 days a week at the moment. And hopefully by the end of the month, we'll go back full time, but we'll wait and see. So it's definitely impacted, but that's the time we live in, isn't it? So
no, it's unfortunate. It depends where you are in the world. I think people are sort of all living and breathing it in different ways. And is there an expectation around when you can get back to normal? Do you have any view on that?
I'm hoping by the end of the month, because it's very much focused around vaccination. So I do apologise about this dog.
No, don't apologise. He's
so sorry.
Is he a big dog, or is that just a really loud dog? That's really. He is a big dog. I say good because he sounds like a big dog, and
He's a big dog, and he's a big fluff ball. He actually is a Groodle, so he's a golden retriever across a standard poodle. So he sounds scary. He looks like a teddy bear. So so talking about COVID, so absolutely, it's definitely taken a little bit of a hit. So, but now it's all focused on vaccinations. So my husband's been done, our tradesman's getting done. So hopefully once that all into the, come mid-August, we should be able to go back full time. So
yeah, well, fingers crossed. Hope it goes back for you guys. And then the other,
thank you.
I guess the other question is, so in terms of your commercial work, and is that mainly the refrigeration side, or are you looking to do the other parts of the business as well? What's the focus there and the reason for sort of trying to move more into that space?
So to be honest, so a lot of our work is residential and we've definitely done so well, but with the commercial, we do want to kind of break into that because we do want to grow but grow slowly, if that makes any sense. So yeah, getting into that commercial side is definitely something that my husband's interested, he's to do. And yeah, the opportunity is there. So
yeah, fantastic.
So that's,
And then you're not the first family. I spoke to a company that were based out in Adelaide a couple of weeks ago, and they're a family business. How does that work with you and your husband? Is that, can you give us the background about how you sort of got into business together and how that was formulated?
Yeah, sure. So I had our first child, our second child, I should say. And I was on maternity leave. So I was on maternity leave. My husband was talking about starting a business for 2-3 years prior. And it was me, to the stability of being in company, holding the chain back. And I just thought, you know what, we'll do it. Worst case scenario, we'll go back and find full-time work. So, I'm so glad that he kept pressuring me to do it because he's done really well. And and it's great.
And it's easy as there's the dog. Is that the dog?
There's the dog.
listen, mate. We're trying to do. What's the dog's name? Keep it down, mate. We're trying to do a podcast here.
Benji. I know. I'm so sorry.
I can see what you mean. Actually, I can see he's not actually that scary a looking dog.
He's really not.
And so when you approach the commercial work and now you're sort of trying to build the business and grow that, how are you approaching kind of winning that business and marketing your company to do that?
So about maybe 6 months ago, we actually engaged a advisory group. So Trade Advisory Group. Yeah. They're located in Glen, because my background's employment, so I'm quite comfortable with employment, but understanding the business, all the ins and outs of businesses, business things like cash flow, sustainability of growth. I'm so unbelievably sorry. Just the growth, sustainability. We weren't sure which direction, if we were moving in the right direction. We weren't understanding our profit. So we engaged them, and they have been amazing to us. So they've been able to assist us with our cash flow, understanding that, and also they're helping lenders as well. So again, we've never tendered for work for commercial. So they assist us with doing that too. So
great, fantastic. And that's actually seems to be quite common. I've spoken to quite a few trades companies who have had a business network locally or engaged an advisor, and everyone seems to speak very highly of it. How did you measure that how did you measure that engagement once you decided to pick an advisor and work with them? How did you decide what the payback was?
I think it was more, we sat down and we thought, okay, do we want to stay a small company, with 5, we want to continue to grow, and we might be able to take on 8 employees. And then what does next year look like? What does the year after look like? Where do we see ourselves moving to? And then I had a conversation. I thought that's, with the Trade Advisory Group, and said, you guys, absolutely, because he also comes from an air conditioning background. So it kind of worked out perfect for us because he understood air conditioning. Oh,
okay.
Yeah. So it really worked out perfect. It's just giving us, and also the confidence in understanding, when we do look at our cash flow. I've never worked with numbers before until the business. So understanding our cash flow and understanding all the backhand of the accountancy, just it's little things that all add up to those large things that actually make an impact in the business.
Yeah, that seems to be a common thing, is actually having that sort of vision, almost like having a business plan that says, where do we want to be in 3 years? What are the things we need to do? And also, can we afford to do it? And if we can't, how much business do we need to win to do that? How impacted are you by sort of material costs changing, if at all? Has that affected your company
It
much?
hasn't. No, we're lucky in that sense. It had material costs hasn't skyrocketed for us. So yeah, we've been definitely lucky in that.
And you talked about cash flow. I mean, that's one area that seems to be, I think when I talk to bigger trades companies, they seem to be quite good at having those models that say, this is our charge out rate, this is like material costs, and being quite, I guess, dare I say, kind of really robust about that on a monthly basis and figuring out, what the profit's going to be and all those types of things. Was that a big part of the kind of advice? And I guess someone coming from the trades themselves made that pretty helpful in terms of the elements you need to plug into to get to a decent forecast. Yeah.
Definitely. Absolutely. So beforehand, my husband would just work out and it would be all in his head. So for me, and not understanding air conditioning, I had no idea what was going on. So it's been able to give us both the understanding and kind of, okay, we're both on the same page, and this is actually where we're going to go from A to B, then to C. So it's been really handy in that situation where we're both understanding the same thing.
yeah, which is great. And do you want to walk through maybe your role, because it's in the company, it's quite commonplace. Do you want to maybe walk through sort of what keeps you busy and how you approach that?
Absolutely. So I do, I guess, all the backhand stuff, if you like to say. So I do all of the accounts on the back end. I schedule all the jobs. Oh gosh, there's so much. I can't even think. There's too much. So everything that isn't related to a tradesman of him, because Rob basically just does the tradie type work. He's out on the job site. Everything else I'll do. He does do the invoicing, so I don't actually need to worry about that. But everything else I look after. So everything accounts, everything kind of keeping the balls moving, really.
And I presume that's, I mean, in a way, having you doing that has enabled the business to grow to the employees that you're at the moment, and to actually have those discussions around growing even further.
Absolutely.
Like without you, that probably wouldn't be possible. I think it's my general sense of these things.
Oh, I would hope so. I would definitely hope so. No, I think so, yeah, because it definitely takes the pressure off Rob. He doesn't need to worry about any of that. He just goes and does his thing. He goes to work. He installs, supplies, does all of that. And then everything else, it's he knows that it's covered, so he doesn't even think twice about it. So,
and then back to the sort of business advisory. So when you're thinking about going out and engaging new commercial, how are you approaching that side in terms of who you decide to go after, or is it more incoming work that's coming your way and then you're building on that?
So it's actually through a tendering. So there's actually tendering sites that you can actually go in and tender. Great. So we do a lot. We've been doing a lot of those. So as I said, we're only small, so we're only going the smaller tenders. But you just got to get your foot in the door. So yeah.
And, do you have a sense of how many of those you win, or do you have an expectation? I'll rephrase the question. Do you have an expectation that for every job that you tender, your hit rate will be X%?
I can't actually judge that at the moment because we've only just kind of started the process. So I can definitely let you know in 12 months. But great. But yeah, I would imagine coming from, I mean, again, my experience is in employment, but I understand like the tendering process and how many people tender and all of that sort of stuff. So I would say, if we can get a hit out of, say, 10, if we get 2 accept, that would be good.
Great. Yeah. And how do you approach pricing and all those types of things when you go into those tender processes?
So again, that's where our advisor definitely helps us out. Because we wouldn't know, or back in the day if we didn't have our advisor, we wouldn't understand how to actually price correctly. So that's where he definitely comes in and gives us an idea of what materials we will need, which we understand that, but it's the costing. So, we don't want to run a job and be at a loss, which it can be quite easy when you're doing those types of tenders if you don't understand. So
yeah, that's why I mentioned material costs. I think there's in certain, I'm going to give you probably one of the most obvious examples I've seen recently is the price of steel has gone up significantly in the last sort of 3 months. And what you're seeing is lots of small trades companies aren't forecasting that into their quotes, and then they go to buy the materials and you get this nasty surprise, actually we're not going to make any money on this job. And so it's a really important, it's probably an area that's not talked about enough. We've certainly started to pay more attention to it because it can make it's the difference between being profitable and not being profitable.
Absolutely.
And surprised. Yeah,
because even if it's one job that you lose money on, it can really, especially if you're a small business, you can take a very big hit from it.
Well, especially if it's a commercial job as well, and it's bigger and it might take a little bit longer and everything else that goes with that. So I think that's a really important area. And I think I've heard that the person you're describing in terms of that business network, I've also heard people refer to mentors. So actually one of the great things that I have witnessed within trades companies is the fact that most tradies are quite happy to talk to other tradies, even in the same area, and offer them advice and tips about, hey, this is how I approach building my business. And they've sort of seen it, done it. And there's a lot to learn from those people's previous mistakes, actually, so you don't make the same ones. And, when you've sort of been doing this, what has been the biggest challenge, since you've got into the business and been helping run things?
COVID, definitely now.
Definitely.
This has probably been our biggest challenge that we've faced in the past 4 weeks. So, definitely hands down. Before then, there was challenges, but we could always move through them. But this is definitely our biggest one.
And now you're up to sort of 5 employees. How did you approach that, and when was the right time for you to sort of grow outside of where you were? How did you make that decision?
Yeah, sure. So it would have been about 6 months into the business, and we were really looking for a 4th year apprentice and thought that would be perfect. So we were lucky enough, we found a 4th year, and he's still with us today.
Great.
And he's great. And then about it would have been January, February this year. We actually took on last year a work experience student from school for 2 weeks.
Cool. Yeah.
And then when he finished school, we offered him a position with us. And so, he's also with us now. And our casual, he is actually, we've known him for a long time. So he actually is like a labourer in a general tradesman that currently helps us. And then, of course, there's me. So, it was just a decision. It was the growth as well. Rob couldn't take all of the workload on himself. And we thought it would be better profitability wise that we hire our staff rather than subcontract it out. So that was the reason behind that.
And was the sort of school student, was that a conscious decision, or was that just sort of fortuitous? You came across someone, or you actually consciously said, let's go and find a sort of someone to come and do some work experience. If it works out, we'll hire them.
Yeah, look, we weren't completely serious about hiring an apprentice, but when he came on board, we really made the decision, like when he did the work experience, we thought, you know what, he's got a great work ethic. Let's take him, because he's only 16. So, when you have that work ethic already built in you.
At that age,
at that age, it's hard to find and it's hard to come by. We jumped straight into it and offered him a job.
It's a really, I spoke to a builder recently, and he was talking about, everyone would turn up and say, I want to work, I really want a job, and I'm going to do it. And I don't mind getting up at 6 a.m. and being on site at 7 and doing what's required. And the reality is, many of them would then join and actually be, 2 weeks in saying, actually, it's dark, it's cold, I don't want to get out of bed and be here at 7. And It's also finding those people with the sort of attitudinal stuff is actually almost more important than the skill set, certainly for someone who's entering the industry, right, as a first starter. So
absolutely, I think it definitely that, and we've been lucky. We've been very, very lucky with our staff that they come, they've got that work ethic behind them, and they support us. So,
and how's Rob balanced that sort of being on the tools and having to do the work that you have, which sounds like you were kind of inundated, and actually helping train an apprentice or a school leader? Have you approached how they're kind of onboarded into the company and taught the sort of tools of the trade, as it were?
Yeah, sure. So, at the moment, our 4th year is actually now a tradesman. So it shows our youngest apprentice a lot. So
great.
Has been absolutely fantastic in that. He's really supportive of Brandon and actually shows him a lot of things. And then especially when it comes to around the TAFE times, Rob will sit down. He did this with our 4th year, when he was a 4th year, sat down and worked through some, just the little bits and pieces that they may not be completely comfortable with before they go into their exams or to do assessments and things. So yeah, so and whilst he's on site, he will show and take the time, he will slow down to take the time to show them exactly how you do it and do it right in the correct way.
Yeah. Fantastic. And then what doing your job, there's other people probably listening who are sort of helping run the sort of back office and really keep the business growing and turning over, which is a really, really critical role, particularly when you're focused on growth. Any advice you would give those people? Are there things that you couldn't live without that help you do that job?
I would definitely say to have the programs in place. So the correct accountancy program, the correct programs such as Tradify, a perfect example, where you can, it's a one-stop shop for invoicing, quotes, scheduler, and it's very easy, and you can have multiple people on that program. Without that, in us starting our business, it would have been, I would hate to think of what that would have looked like. So we were lucky enough when we first started, we had those programs already set up. So we were able to jump straight in and get moving, really.
Yeah, cool. And how did you thinking about your accountancy package, how did you approach that? How did you know which ones, when you made that decision, how did you pick the programs and make that call?
I did a bit of research. We did a bit of research and thought, okay, what is the best program out there? And of course, for us, it was Xero that worked with what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I also wanted a net program, not coming from a accountancy type background or being very green. I needed a program that was quite easy that you can jump in and you can teach yourself pretty much. I mean, only the basics. I'm not saying I'm an expert, but so just an easier, make your life easier so you have the time to worry about other things and focus your energy onto those.
And any advice on how you work with the people on the tools, I guess in the field doing work? You talked about scheduling and all those things. Any learnings from that in terms of how you make that really effective, both for your kind of end customer and also the people that work for you?
I think so the way that we use our scheduling for the team, it's been really, so we use the Tradify scheduler. So our tradesman has access to that. So he knows exactly what he's going to be doing for the next 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. He knows exactly where he's going to be. So he can also have any questions. So if he has any questions and says, okay, what about this date? What's happening on this day? It's all there. What I also like is that if I don't see them because I'm not on the tools or anything, they can, if they've done any overtime, they can do timesheets as well. That has been fantastic. So if they don't remember, I say to them, you have to put it in. You do overtime, put it in that day, and they do. So then when I go to do pays, I don't have to chase anyone. It's already all there. So that's really helped that situation.
Yeah, fantastic. And then one of the other questions, I kind of ask everyone this, and I'm intrigued. You do refrigeration, and obviously, you're in cooling and everything else. Do you think about the future in terms of how those industries might change? For environmental reasons, are there things that you look at and think, okay, do we need to get into this business? A comparison is the company I spoke to the other day in Adelaide also did solar power or solar panels as part of their business. Not a big part of the business. They were quite open about that, but it was part of the business. How do you think about that stuff, or do you think about that stuff?
Absolutely. And with Arctic anyway, they're already starting to change the ways for the gases that we currently use. So definitely whatever changes is made, especially for the environment, we are definitely on board for that.
Yeah. And how do you keep yourself up to speed and all that stuff?
It's mostly through, Facebook's fantastic. Like if you have a look at their, on their pages and things, that's amazing. So any social media type information that you can actually get. Otherwise, it's just having a bit of research, really, or they send emails as well. So, they always like to keep you updated and with all the new changes and things. Yeah. Yeah,
fantastic. And any advice that you would give? There's one piece of advice apart from the programs for you and Rob when you made that sort of brave decision to really go out there and build the business. Is there one thing you talked about an advisor? Is there anything else anyone else who's listening who's maybe currently a sole trader thinking about expanding, any advice you'd give them?
I would actually also say manage time better. So I didn't manage my time very well with two kids, so two small kids. So it was very difficult for me. So I was working a lot at nighttime and work into the night. And then it was, the next day it's like Groundhog Day, same thing. Got the kids, then you go do your work. So I've actually found a kind of groove now. So but that's also because my kids are getting, like my eldest is getting a little bit older. But it's
your kids aren't the problem. It's that dog.
Yeah, it is the dog. You know what? He's my third child.
What have you done to him? What have you done to him? He's gone very quiet.
He's now watching them. He's now just glaring at them.
Okay. Sorry, I interrupted. I just suddenly realised I was concerned because he was very quiet all of a sudden. I thought, what's happened to that dog?
Yeah, he's just staring at them now. He's done his little yell for a while. So that it's managing time. I think that is really important between family time and getting that balance. It's hard, and I don't really have advice to give on how you do that because everyone's circumstances is very, very different. But sit down and actually can focus and think, okay, how could we manage this better so the business doesn't overtake
everything else.
Everything else. Yeah, absolutely.
Did it make it easier being a sort of husband and wife team? Do you think that made that an easier discussion than maybe if you weren't, in terms of understanding kind of the challenges that you were both facing?
Definitely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Great. Okay, cool. We always finish on a sort of handful of questions. This has been great, by the way. It's really good to sort of hear how you've been growing the business and running it. And I think short of hopefully what is hopefully a blip in terms of COVID, it's a long blip, but sort of the level of lockdown that you're currently experiencing will hopefully change and you get back into sort of building the business and focus on that commercial stuff.
Fingers crossed. I can't wait.
We ask everyone a series of questions. I'm going to be quite intrigued as to your answers. One was, we usually talk about trades, but if you weren't doing what you're doing, what would you be doing now if you had a choice? It's usually the question is, if it wasn't the trade you're currently, like, you're not going to be doing refrigeration and everything else, what would your trade be? Is the question.
I think I would be back into what I did, and Rob would probably not. It's not a trade. He would probably be a police officer.
Oh, really?
So not so much. He would in a heartbeat. So yeah. So if he didn't have this trade, then yes, he would. That's the direction he would take.
Well, he's got a good police dog in the house anyway.
That's right.
It'd be great for that. Great. Okay. And then, presumably on-site for you is not as often on the site itself, but what would be your favorite kind of go-to on-site lunch if you had one?
Well, the boys' ones is pizza. Absolutely. That's
yours, pizza, right? Okay.
Yeah, that's theirs. That's their go-to for when they're on site.
And for you, when you're sort of on your site, when you're there?
Oh, look, I don't really go out to site because they're mostly customers' home. So
when I say on site, I mean on site in the generic phrase of when you're at work.
Oh, okay. When I'm at work, look, I can't have anything around children. If I have chocolate, I can't have chocolate. They take everything away from me. But if the kids aren't here, definitely chocolate.
Chocolate.
And lots of it.
And then when you do, if you ever do, the question here is, what's your favorite go-to tool brand? Do you have one? Yep. And as a company, do you have a preference?
Definitely Makita.
Yeah, they do seem to be popular.
Yeah, they're fantastic. They last long too.
Yeah, which is important. So we think about cash flow and all those things. And then the other question, which unfortunately things change so quickly every time I ask this question, but the question is sort of when things open up, which actually unfortunately is a reality right now in New South Wales, when they do start to open up, is there a sort of favourite sporting event or music event you would pick to go to?
I would love probably for Rob to get to the grand final. So if he can go to, because he's a big Panthers fan. I don't know if anyone knows Panthers, but for the NRL. Yeah, so he would love to get to a grand final if they were in it.
Cool. And then last question is, are there people, I mean, you're pretty active on Facebook in sort of various groups. Are there other people you think we should speak to that would make an interesting discussion for our sort of viewers and listeners?
Yeah, definitely. Well, we have an electrician So he's also based in the Blue Mountains, Urban Tech Electrical. So he's a small business just like us. He's been running a lot longer. That's
great.
He's
Fantastic. Okay, Tara, I know how busy you are. So I really, really appreciate you taking the time to do this. It's been really insightful, and it's really great to get the perspective of how you're principally, pretty much running the business and making sure that, you're giving a great customer experience, but also looking to build in the future. And I think the way you've hired people has been, for people listening, I think is a really good approach. And again, quite a cost-efficient way of doing that, and also bringing people into the trade. So yeah, really fantastic, and I appreciate you spending the time for us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. And so for all of our listeners, as always, please do share feedback and comments and review us if you can, if you're on Apple and other podcast or video players. That would be greatly appreciated. And until next time, we'll see you soon. Cheers. Bye.
And that brings us to the end of this episode. Behind the Tools is brought to you by Tradify, job management software for your trade business. If you enjoyed the podcast, let us know by leaving a review, and be sure to tell your mates about it. Email behindthetools@tradifyhq.com if you or someone you know would be keen to join the show as a guest.